This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to w.e.b. News. News-free Dixie for the 21st century.
Good evening, boys and girls, scholars and laymen, and welcome to another wonderful edutainment edition of The Artivist Thinks. I'm your host for the empowerment segment, Brother Ron, also known as R2, C2, H2, The Artivist. And today's topic is Marcus Mosiah Garvey doesn't need a pardon. Once again, Brother Marcus Garvey, aka the king of Pan-Africanism, does not need a pardon. He needs an apology. An apology, not a pardon. There's a difference. Marcus Garvey did not do anything wrong in loving and serving his people, black people. He did nothing wrong. On the other hand, the white power system, the white supremacist system, the American way did him a total disservice. Totally a lot of injustice towards Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And I'm going to explain it in a few minutes why he does not need a pardon, but he needs an apology for the United States government for undermining his movement, for assassinating his character, and for basically ruining his life. Marcus Garvey is from Jamaica, of course. So is Bob Marley. But Marcus Garvey is an interest to me because he's probably our greatest black mass leader in history. Marcus Garvey was able to command the respect and the attention and the focus of millions of black people throughout the African diaspora. He had millions of followers throughout the world. And you gotta think about it, there was no social media back then. There was no TV. He didn't have a regular radio show where he could just people call in, and it was amazing. He was at the right place at the right time. Marcus Garvey initially came over to America to connect with his pen pal and mentor, Booker T. Washington, the leader of the Tuskegee Institute and Machine. Yes, that Booker T. Washington, who was the first black person to eat as a dinner guest at the White House, that Booker T. Washington. Yes, him. That was Marcus Garvey's mentor. So he came over here initially to meet with Booker T. Washington, but unfortunately, Booker T. Washington died the year before. So Marcus decided, hey, I'm gonna create the United Negro Improvement Association. This is back in, I believe, in March of 1916. I believe it happened in like over 100 years ago. And he was given his first professional speaking engagement by none other than A. Philip Randolph. Yes, that A. Philip Randolph of the Sleeping Car Pullman Porters Union, the one who actually planned out the original 1943 proposed March on Washington, which was delayed by a generation until a gentleman named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was on the scene. That A. Philip Randolph gave Marcus Mosiah Garvey his first professional speaking engagement in the States. And, his following quickly grew. Like I said, he had millions of followers. He also had admirers from other parts of the globe. For example, Ho Chi Minh, the leader of the Northern Vietnamese resistance, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Yeah, that Ho Chi Minh. He actually used to come from Vietnam to America to listen to Marcus Garvey speak in Harlem. He would actually make trips across the ocean just to come to New York, Harlem, to listen to the great Marcus Mosiah Garvey speak. You know, Marcus Mosiah Garvey made a lot of enemies among the black elite class, the boule, whatever y'all call it, you know, the black elites. You know, he made a lot of enemies among them. Chief among his rivals in that group was Dr. W.e.b. Du Bois, the first black person to achieve a PhD degree at Harvard University, and also one of the founding charter members of the n.a.a.c.p, the National Association, for the Investment of Colored People. He was one of the founding members. You know, the founding members really were white people with money. And we'll talk about that in another video. But that was one of his chief rivals. And Marcus Garvey, why I say he's owed an apology? Well, he was convicted of mail fraud back in the 1920s. He was set up by the government. You see, you got to understand this. The FBI became the FBI not because of public enemies of John Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde, not because of them, but because they took down the greatest threat to white supremacy of the century. The real black messiah, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. He was the threat. So J. Edgar Hoover, who was actually a librarian at the Library of Congress, he was not a law enforcement officer when he first started, you know, getting into the FBI business, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He actually was a librarian. You can look this up. Take a look. It's all online. He was a librarian at the Library of Congress. That's why he was so good at being a gatekeeper of information. You know how to organize things. And, you know, because knowledge is the currency of the universe. If you want real power, the most powerful people and institutions in the world, they run on knowledge, not on money. They are the gatekeepers of knowledge and information. So J. Edgar Hoover understood his role. And also, the first black FBI agent in history was hired to neutralize brother Marcus Garvey, to get close to him and to neutralize him by any means necessary. So the first black FBI agent in history was a guy named James Wormley Jones, also known as Agent 800. You could Google those names, James Wormley Jones and Agent 800, and you should get, you know, him. He was the first black FBI agent hired by the Bureau to neutralize Marcus Garvey, make him ineffective. It was a couple of black FBI agents that infiltrated the United Negro Improvement Association to get at Marcus Garvey. His Black Star Line was actually sabotaged by the government. They would put things in a fuel tank to make them not work, among other things. He had people that betrayed his trust in his organization. Marcus Garvey was very sincere about helping black people, about uplifting his race, about, you know, like he said, up you might race and accomplish what you will. He also had some interesting partners. Like, you know, they say politics make for strange bedfellows. Like one of his biggest supporters was the Ku Klux Klan. They believe in Garvey's Back to Africa initiative, his Black Star Line. They actually gave him money to support his movement. And, you know, people say, well, that's strange. It's like, is that selling out? Well, you know, the Nation of Islam invited the founder of the American Nazi Party on several occasions to speak before their followers, George Lincoln Rockwell, back in the 60s. And I believe the Nation of Islam actually brought property, real estate from Klans people down in Georgia. You know, Elijah Muhammad is from Georgia. So, you know, when you're dealing in a white supremacist system, black folks must deal with white supremacists every day. You got to deal with them because it's their system. This system benefits them staying on top of you, exploiting you, and keeping you at the bottom. Now you have this black man by the name of Marcus Garvey comes along and says, no, you don't have to stay at the bottom. Just get you some knowledge yourself, because the people without history is like a tree without roots. People without history is like a tree without roots. Marcus Garvey dedicated his mind, body, and soul to the movement. You know, he was so dedicated that he actually would just eat the same cheap food over and over again because he wanted to put all of his resources and focus and energy into uplifting and empowering black people across the planet. And Marcus Garvey is interested. He always talked about Back to Africa, the Black Star Lines, you know, the ship vessels sending folks back to Africa to help, you know, uplift Africa. Marcus Garvey never stepped foot in Africa a day of his life. You see how it works? You see how the universe uses people? You know, you think about, or it's not about the most qualified. It's not even about the most experienced a lot of times. The universe will use a person with a certain character to get things done in an unexpected way. The universe will use people with certain characteristics to get things done in an unconventional way. That's how it works. All right, see how it works. Marcus Garvey never stepped foot in Africa, but yet he had a vision of going back to Africa to connect the brothers and sisters, not only throughout the diaspora, but to the motherland. That's power. This man had millions of followers without he didn't have Twitter back then, or Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook or YouTube. Who was this man? Who sent this man? But the thing about it is, what did he do wrong? Where's the pardon come? Why he got to get pardoned? He didn't commit no crime. All he wanted to do was, he loved his people so much that he wanted to uplift them and let them know, hey, you forgot you knew who you were. You forgot that you knew that you knew. I'm here to remind you, black people, black man, black woman, black child. You are the Holy Trinity that they speak of in the Bible. You are the chosen people of the Bible. You are the chosen people of destiny. What did he do wrong? Now, people will say, well, COINTELPRO was started back in the 60s to neutralize the black movement and black power, civil rights movements. No, COINTELPRO started with Marcus Garvey. Like I said before, the FBI blood sacrificed Marcus Garvey in order to become the FBI that we know today. Marcus Garvey was the first black messiah that it took down. Probably the most powerful black messiah, to be honest with you. You know, without Marcus Garvey, would you have Ali? Would you have Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam? Would you have a Malcolm X? Would you have all these people? Because you got to understand that Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, even Minister Farrakhan, Muhammad Ali, their people, their families were followers of Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was a follower of Booker T. Washington. And when people think of Booker T. Washington, they think of it as being a Tom. But truth be told, Booker T. Washington was doing a lot of things behind the scenes to empower black people. As a matter of fact, some scholars or people have suggested that the n.a.a.c.p. or the Niagara movement, which led to the formation of n.a.a.c.p., was started in response to try to neutralize Booker T. Washington, his effectiveness, because he was the #1 black leader in America the first 15 years of the 20th century. Really for 20 years, from 1895, when he did the Atlanta Compromise speech, all the way up to his death in 1915, he was the #1 black spokesperson in America for black people. And a lot of, people in the white power structure fear Booker T. Washington. A lot of black folks in the black leadership class, they loathe Booker T. Washington. People think about this situation with Dr. Umar Johnson and General Seti and other folks in the black conscious community. But truth be told, beef goes back a long way in black leadership history. There's always been beef, whether it be between Frederick Douglass or Reverend Henry Highland Garnett, whether it be between Booker T. Washington and W.e.b. Du Bois, whether it be between Marcus Garvey and W.e.b. Du Bois. The beef always been there. For example, it was an event known as the Boston Riot that happened back in July 30th, 1903 in Boston in a black church where Booker T. Washington's National Negro Business League, this is before there was an Urban League or n.a.a.c.p. Booker T. Washington had this very powerful national machine known as the National Negro Business League. He was the keynote speaker, but his event was interrupted by a member of the Niagara movement and one of the charter members of the n.a.a.c.p., Brother William Monroe Trotter, who was the first black Phi Beta Kappa at Harvard University. He actually interrupted the event. He brought in street people, women, all type of folks to cause a ruckus, to cause organized chaos and confusion. And William Monroe Trotter's interest, because also he was the founder and editor of The Guardian, a very important newspaper. He was like really a prophet of what was to come in the 20th century. He warned about the Jim Crow or the Dixie Line creeping up all the way back into Boston to resegregate the city or whatnot. And also, before there was a Kanye or Eartha Kitt, he actually went to the White House when Woodrow Wilson was president and confronted the president of the United States. Basically did a Joe Wilson, you lied! Because a lot of black folks went for Wilson, including the black leadership, like people like Trotter and Ida B. Wells Barnett and even Du Bois. They thought he was the next coming of Lincoln. Really? They thought Woodrow Wilson was the next coming of Lincoln. But William Monroe Trotter actually went to the White House and confronted Woodrow Wilson, I believe, in the Oval Office and basically called him a liar to his face. And Woodrow Wilson, you know, he's from Virginia or Virginia, whatever. He didn't take too kindly to a black person disrespecting him like that in his house. So anyway, I say all this to say that beefing is normal in black leadership. The only difference is now that we have social media and technology to let people be more aware and more participatory in the beefing. So, getting back to Marcus Garvey. Why does he need a pardon when he didn't do anything wrong? The government needs to issue his family an apology, an official apology, and they do something, you know, maybe pay reparations to the family for all the suffering, pain and suffering they caused Marcus Garvey. Okay, he lived until 1940, and legend has it that he actually read his own obituary and had a heart attack. The Chicago Defender thought he was already dead. He read his obituary. He either had a stroke or a heart attack. You can look this up. It's available online. But he died in 1940, really a relatively young age. You know. But there's another thing. You know, when Marcus Garvey was doing this stuff, his work, he was in his 20s and 30s. This is the thing about neutralizing certain type of black leaders in their 30s. If you go back to history, you look at even Steve Biko. He was killed, I think he was 31 years old. You look at Thomas Sankara. He was about maybe 39 or 37, something like that. And Medgar Evers was 37. Malcolm and Martin Luther King was both 39. It's the thing about getting black men in their 30s. Because this is a time where you're not necessarily too young or too old. You right in the middle. You're able to connect generations. You're relevant to multiple generations. That's why they get you, I believe, in your 30s. Jesus was killed at 33. No, it is what it is. But also I have an issue with the movement to pardon Marcus Garvey went down. President Obama was in office for 8 years. This should have been an 8-year campaign. With all due respect to the family members and supporters of Marcus Garvey to get his name cleared. It should have been an 8-year process because the truth of the matter is, I'm guessing, I think a majority of black folks are not really aware of who Marcus Garvey was, which is sad. Which is sad because we don't control our media and information apparatuses. We are dependent on the white power structure to help disseminate certain information. And we certainly ain't gonna get knowledge of self in our classrooms anymore. And it really, which is the foundation of education. So if you're dependent on your enemy to inform you about who you are, if you're dependent on your enemy for a job, if you are dependent on your enemy for survival, then you are shit out of luck, basically. And that's where black folks at right now. So we got to get away from that. But the majority of Americans, black Americans, do not know about Marcus Garvey. I know this because I remember when I went to the Smithsonian National African American History Museum that just opened. I went there back in October of last year. And I was talking to this young couple, this young black couple, and I was trying to inform this sister. I was like, we was waiting in line to see the mint condition Emmett Till casket. Because, the white supremacists love to keep them tools of fear and oppression and repression in mint condition. Think about it. They'll preserve a lynching a crime scene in mint condition. The Emmett Till casket, his original casket, he was buried at mint condition, on display. Black pain, black misery on display. But anyway, let me stop that. But we was waiting in line to see the Emmett Till casket. Sister and her husband from Maryland, young couple in their 20s. And I was talking about, when you think about Marcus Garvey, she said, I didn't really know too much about him. Was he like one of those bad radical people? And this is, mind you, she had dreads and all the natural hair and all that stuff. She's beautiful. But she said, is he one of those radical, like, hate white people? Why is that when you love black people, you gotta hate white people? That's not the opposite of hating white people. Love and hate are not even opposites. They the same emotion, if you think about it. But that's another video. But it was interesting talking to her because this lady has the potential to become a parent. And if she's thinking a lot of misinformation and being misinformed about Brother Marcus Garvey, she could pass it on to her seed, and her seed could pass it on to their seed, and so on and so on. So you see how it works? This snowball effect of misinformation and lack of knowledge of self, how it can really play with the black psyche over generations. We're still dealing with the effects of post-traumatic slave disorder. So I say all this to say, even with Mumbi Abu-Jamal, he got his hardcore supporters, Mutulu Shakur. You know, I don't know how many fans of Tupac are aware of the fact that Mutulu Shakur is still in prison. Tupac's stepfather, one of his mentors, key mentors. Even though they listen to Pac, you know, even with Tupac legacy, they chopping and screwing it up. You know, they chop and screw his lyrics and his songs, and they remix upon remix, and they leave out certain things, like when they translate the Bible, time after time, original words and meanings and phrases get misconstrued. I really do believe that, because it's just like you deal with humans. Anytime something is dealing with humanity and dealing with people involvement, things will get misconstrued and misinterpreted. And it is what it is, but truth is truth. There's even truth in a lie. There's even fact in myth, you know. So yeah, Mumbi Abu-Jamal, I doubt that the majority of black Americans actually know who Mumbi Abu-Jamal is. But if you are a part of the conscious community, if you are active in community issues, if you are activist, if you are a person who is well read, of course you know about the plight of Mumbi Abu-Jamal. But the majority of African Americans do not know about Mumbi Abu-Jamal. Okay? That is not guesswork, that's a fact. You know, a lot of people in my family are not aware of him, let alone Marcus Garvey. And whatever they are aware of, okay, Mumbi Abu-Jamal is a cop killer. Who's saying that he's a cop killer? Marcus Garvey hate white people. Who said he hate white people? What's the source? Because Marcus Garvey, he got his writings available. You get on Amazon. You got even his voice. They got recordings of his voice. You know, look for me in the whirlwind. You know, all that stuff. So that's what happens. You make, you know, when you talk about just the age of Aquarius, everything becomes unveiled. Yeah, things get out in the open, but if you don't have the discernment or develop the critical thinking machinations or methodology in order to understand what you are viewing or reading or whatever, then yeah, the truth, the facts could be staring you right in the face, but you will never understand, let alone understand what you are witnessing or seeing or taking in. See, it's funny, like you said, sometimes the best way to hide is in public. There's a reason for that. Because majority of the public is misinformed or not aware at all. So Marcus Garvey, once again, does not need a pardon. He needs an official apology from the U.S. government. His family needs to be paid some type of reparation or restitution for the trauma. Because not only with Marcus Garvey, he experienced trauma in his life, but that trauma get passed from generation to generation. You look at Malcolm X's family. You know, Malcolm even talked about in his autobiography how a lot of the strong black men, particularly his daddy brother, including his father, all died violent deaths because they were strong black men. They stood up for themselves. Look at the effect on Marcus Garvey's family. Like, what was the cause? You know, like they saw what happened to their ancestor. You know, they might have said, oh, I can't raise my child, or I can't help him go this way like his ancestor did, because they're going to get him. Look at Malcolm X's family today. Beautiful women. A lot of beautiful women. They are leading. They are leading productive lives from what I can tell. But where are the male descendants of Malcolm? We already know what happened to one of them a couple years back. May he rest in peace, Malcolm Shabazz. But where are the male descendants? See, with white supremacy, they kill out bloodlines. They don't just stop with the person. They kill off the person's bloodline. That's how deep it runs. You know, you ever heard of Sicilian vendettas? You know, you kill my daddy. I'm not going to just kill the man who killed my dad. I'm going to kill his whole family, because I don't want them to come back and kill me. See how it works? This is a vicious, ugly cycle, y'all. But we should be demanding that President Obama gives Marcus Garvey and his family an apology on behalf of the U.S. government, and to pay them compensation for their pain and suffering over the decades with interest. And furthermore, I want to also bring it to the table as well, some more food of thought. A lot of black Americans are not aware of the man, the incredible man, and the incredible legacy of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And one way that could happen is to get the youth engaged in understanding the legacy of this great man, and to help them in their own creative way disseminate that information. This is a case in point. Malcolm X was not well liked by the black establishment. even after death, they feared the man. You know, they didn't want to talk about him. It was taboo to speak of Malcolm X in public. That's why Ossie Davis said what he said. He was our shining black prince, our manhood. You know, a lot of people want to look the other way. Even if you read the New York Times article, his obituary, which came out around the time of his death, they really downplayed Malcolm X, saying that he was a pariah and all this other stuff, anything but a great man. And now decades later, they create a stamp in his image. We basically got folks licking his ass on the stamp to post it on their mail. So Malcolm went from being a enemy to being an American hero, being on the level of a Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. You know, white folks, they now identify with Malcolm. But the reality is white folks always overstood Malcolm. When I say white folks, I'm not talking about the new white people that became white in the last 100 years or so. I'm talking about the people that run the power structure, the people that set the policy. They overstood Malcolm and what he was about. They knew he was correct. That's why they had to get rid of him. They got rid of him because they knew he was correct. But getting back on point, Malcolm was forgotten about or conveniently left out of discussion when it comes to the great black leaders of the 20th century. It was not until the hip hop era, the hip hop culture, we had rap groups like Public Enemy, Poor Righteous Teachers, X-Clan, rappers sampling the speeches of Brother Malcolm, that the young people once again finally became aware of Brother Malcolm X. They finally became aware of Brother Malcolm X, and that really helped to create a movement that led to the Spike Lee produced movie Malcolm X. Because let me give you a little bit of history about that movie. See, people think that movie just happened like overnight, but really in reality, my understanding that Sister Betty Shabazz, the widow of Malcolm X, sold the rights to his life story to a producer from Hollywood, Marvin Worth. I think she sold it for about 6 figures, maybe 100,000 to 125,000. She sold the rights of her husband's life story, amazing life story, to this white Hollywood producer. So you got 1972, and then the movie doesn't come out to 1992, and we all are well aware, it's well documented, that Spike Lee had a real hard time raising money for a sufficient budget to make this epic movie about this epic man. He had a real hard time to raise a budget to make an epic movie about a very epic man, Malcolm X. So he had to solicit the help of black celebrities like Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Cosby, Janet Jackson. The list goes on. Magic Johnson. The list goes on and on. This is well documented, okay? So the movie comes out, although it's 3 hours and like some change, 3 hours and 25, 30 minutes long, it's really a blockbuster, right? This movie still makes money to this day. It's somewhere in the world right now, somebody's looking at the Malcolm X movie starring Denzel Washington as Malcolm X. Somewhere in the world, somewhere in the universe, that movie is playing. It's like somewhere in the universe, there's a movie starring Gene Hackman somewhere in the universe. A movie starring Gene Hackman is playing somewhere in the universe. And you best believe there's a movie called Malcolm X starring Denzel that's playing somewhere as we speak right now, or as I speak. And so if we could have got the hip hop generation of this day engaged in, promoting Marcus Garvey, who knows? He would have had a stamp by now. He could have had a quote unquote pardon by now. But the thing about it is he never did anything wrong. I remember I talked to this jazz great named J.D. Paran, who's from St. Louis, I believe. He's a New York jazz artist today. And he talked about how he was involved in an opera called Malcolm, which premiered, I believe, back in 1987. And that the black elite was so upset that they would do an opera based on the life story of Malcolm X, that a lot of them walked out, and that the organization that put on the play or the opera, many of the so-called black elites, the boule people, whatever you want to call them, Jack and Jill, whatever, they said we will pull our support from this organization if you continue to run this opera about Malcolm X. This is back in 1987. This is around the same time that the hip-hop culture, the youth culture, embraced Malcolm X and his message, because they were looking for black leadership, because there was a vacancy or a vacuum in black leadership. Now, fast forward to today, 20 years later, or 30 years later rather, there is still a vacuum in black leadership. So it'll be a perfect time to resurrect the memory in our youth consciousness of the great Marcus Garvey. But hence, they're not teaching knowledge of self in the schools. I remember looking at the Eyes on the Prize documentary about the community school situation up in New York, back in the 60s. Everybody should look at that. Look at the whole Eyes on the Prize series. But check out the community school episode where you had black people say, we want control of our schools. And we want to select the teachers who are going to be a part of that school. And we want to help play a part in creating the curriculum for our children in that school, right? So the black folks, the black parents, the community was involved. The teachers were involved. And they created this school, right? And I remember seeing some of the interviews of some of the young people. And they were talking about how they was learning about Langston Hughes and Marcus Garvey. I said they was teaching this in the school. Because every time you talk to a young person, a lot of time, you know, this recently I saw in a news episode about black homeschools. I believe it was in Texas or Louisiana. And they interviewed a young lady and a young woman, beautiful young sister. She said, my favorite class was learning about myself. Was learning about black history, because all knowledge, our foundation of knowledge is knowledge of self. Because once you learn knowledge of self, you can have the confidence to learn anything and everything. So I want to say out this day, one failure, we had 8 years to campaign for the pardon of Marcus Garvey, but also we failed to engage our young people in knowing why he was so important in the first place, why he was so necessary. Because even in 2017, Marcus Garvey matters. Okay, Marcus Garvey matters. And also with Booker T. Washington, a lot of people don't really realize how he really actually died. How he died is still a mystery, but I have talked to researchers and did research that might lead to the conclusion that he was actually killed. He was murdered, foul play. By who knows? Some of the old timers insist, well, I talked to Sister Paula Horton Davis, who did an interesting read on the life and death, Booker T. Washington, Death in 60 Days. It's a book worth reading. There's a lot of controversy around the book because it claims that, you know, the n.a.a.c.p. had an involvement in the murder of Booker T. Washington. But from her study, she told me that, or when you read her book rather, that the old timers said it was a Haitian that poisoned Booker T. Washington. Because Booker T. Washington, towards the end of his life, was very outspoken about the U.S. occupation of Haiti. Back in 1915, he wrote in an article he wrote that was published in the New York Age that was ran and owned by T. Thomas Fortune, a pioneering black media personality. He basically pleaded with the United States to withdraw their forces out of Haiti because the Haitians were a very proud people who had a great history and they deserved the respect. And little, you know, a couple weeks later in November, he's dead. He wrote that op-ed piece in New York Age requesting that the U.S. withdraw their troops out of Haiti. And then a couple weeks later, he's dead. And then the person who replaces him is a guy named Robert Moulton. Because really, the person who should have replaced him was his personal secretary, Emmett Scott. But they end up, for some reason, picking Robert Moulton to replace Booker T. Washington. And Robert Moulton was a U.S. Army intelligence spy. Once again, the guy who came out to Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee was a U.S. Army intelligence spy. And I really do believe if Booker T. Washington was allowed to live, there would not have been a thing known as the Tuskegee experiment. I tell you, the person who took over Booker T. Washington was U.S. Army intelligence spy, and then the government created the Tuskegee experiment. All this connected. See how it works? Okay? So, family, thank you so much for listening to me once again. If you like what you heard, please spread the word from Brother Heard. Please send people down to our channel. Support this way, support us that way, but also you could donate at the link below, PayPal link. And we'll be doing some other things as well because we need the alternative black media to counteract this white supremacist alt-right narrative. We need a counter, alt-black media, unapologetically black media to counteract the isms and schisms and the toxicity of what's going on right now, because this is real news. When I say about real news, is that this is news, this is information that you can use to better your life and to amplify your dreams. Like what I'm doing here, I'm giving y'all information y'all can easily look up, but I'm just doing like a little cliff notes of information about Marcus Garvey. Look this stuff up. You know, because we have been trained not to trust ourselves, let alone each other. I'm talking about black people. So we got to break loose of this. You got to learn how to be thyself, to do for self, to free thyself. Be thyself, do for self, and free thyself. Thank you, family, for listening once again. In the words of the great Duke Ellington, we love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing.